everyone to another episode of Breaking Into Tech. I'm really excited to talk to Brian today. We were chit-chatting before we got started, and it was just, I think this interview is going to be a great wealth of information, especially if you've served in the military. So welcome everyone. If you're watching, feel free to put where you're watching from, and if you have any comments or questions, feel free to put them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them and show them on the screen as they come in. So first, let's welcome Brian to the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. I sort of always do this preface where I'm from. I say I'm from Jersey. You'll probably ask me where I'm from Jersey. So I talk fast. So anytime I start like getting excited and start talking fast, just tell me, hey, stop it. I want to make sure people, definitely get like you talked about, like before the show, we talked about all the benefits, tech wise and benefit wise, that we can talk about. But yeah, it slowed me down if I get too excited.
Okay. I'm from California, so I understand. It's like the opposite side of the coast, but definitely the same thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So let's start with a little bit about you. You told us that you're from Jersey, but let's hear a little bit more of your story and who you are.
Yeah, for sure. So, again, keyword, I'm from Jersey, so I'm gonna keep saying that. But yeah. So, from Jersey, went to play football my whole life. Always been that, I guess football jock, whatever. But also like a different side of it where I was always breaking laptops and breaking computers, and my mom would get mad at me. So I always had that thirst for like I guess technology where it was not really organized or I guess a sense to it, but I just try to jailbreak my PSP, my the PlayStation Portable back in the day, stuff like that. So like it was always there. But fast forward to my hopes and dreams of being a football player goes down when I got hurt in high school. I had to figure it out. So went to college as a student at information systems. Recruiter caught the recruiter caught me at the wrong time, wrong place, which means any place they see you in like a place where you're working, that means, hey, let me talk to this guy. So Navy recruiter came in, said, hey, I asked him, I said, hey, what's that uniform? He said, it's Navy. I said, okay. Week later, I was in the Navy somehow. Signed up. So 6 years later, did everything but graduate from college at that point. But 6 years later in the Navy, as a corpsman, which is, the Air Force version of, a medic. So doing something to be, completely outside of my realm of, needs of the Navy. So even though I try to, do IT and stuff like that, they said, hey, you're going to do medicine. But all in all, a great experience. There's stuff I could take from that experience, attention to detail and all that good stuff. I can take that and carry it on for the rest of my life and even in the field I'm in now. But yeah, so like towards the end of it, that 6 years, I had to make that decision. That contract's coming to an end. And unfortunately, because of the op tempo in the Navy and I was on the ship, I didn't have much time to take leave. But when I finally was able to take leave and think about and decompress and think about my future, I took that opportunity of going home and looking at the VA benefits like we talked about, looked at my brother and my sister who were already developers at their respective companies through boot camps themselves. That had always been in the back of my mind, but I was doing so well in the Navy where it's like that carrot kind of, they stick it in front of you. So I'm like, I'm doing really well. So 4 more years of this, or 5 more years in my case, or, take that, leap and just get out and start my civilian life. So when I was on leave, I looked at the VA benefits, see what I had to deal with. And the one thing they tell you is, hey, if you're going to get out, get out with a plan. And that was the one thing I wanted to do on leave, is have a plan set in stone. So looked on the VA site, I saw vet tech as a benefit. I was like, oh, what is this? This tech. Okay, tech, keyword. And it's like, hey, you can do this without even using your GI Bill. I was like, oh, wow, really? Which means basically it's extra money for you, essentially for your service members. So I saw that. I saw actually the boot camp that my brother and my sister went to was on there, which is right, 20 minutes away from home. It's, again, same benefit, all that good stuff, but it ain't starting until like 3 months after I got out. So it'd be a 3-month, limbo. but I also saw California. And I was stationed in California. I was currently stationed in Norfolk, but I had been stationed in California for 4 years when I first came in. Now, I don't know, something about it caught me where I wanted to go back for some reason, even though it's extra expensive. But I wanted to eventually get back to California, and I saw Sabio just happened to be there. I was like, oh, Sabio, okay. So signed up right there, or I contacted the admissions, signed up, got accepted literally like the last day of my leave period, and went back to the ship. I said, okay, I'm getting out. I'm getting out. I'm gonna go to the boot camp in a month and start the civilian curve or trek with the boot camp. Literally took my stuff, packed it from Norfolk, drove to Delaware where mom lived at, dropped my stuff off, and drove my Jeep to California. And I showed up the day the cohort started. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Wow. That's such a crazy story. And I really liked one of the things that you said, because someone just asked me, like, do you have to reinvent yourself when you get out of the military? And you said, I took the things I learned as a medic, as a service member, and I used them today. And I think sometimes, like, I mean, you're doing something totally different. You're not a medic, you're doing tech, but you're taking those tools. And I think it's more of a pivot and a realignment, and picking the pieces that you learned from the military, and not really a reinvention of yourself. It looks on the outside like it's a reinvention, but I think it still has a lot of those same characters. It's like you're building upon it, not starting from scratch.
Exactly. I mean, I'm like a bootleg life coach. So like I like mentorship. I like just like you said, somebody asked you that, and I say the same thing. Like you may have been chipping paint. Like later when I came in the Navy, I was chipping paint. I was an undead seaman for a year. I was chipping paint and doing the worst job in the Navy. But even those lessons I learned from doing that job, particularly, I leveraged that suck and that stuff I learned, that technical or hands-on capability. I leveraged that to even the job I did in the Navy as a medic or corpsman. And again, everything for me is learning opportunities. So like even again, transferring from the Navy to civilian life, the communication aspects you get from doing patient care, that the ability to communicate with people with let's say medical terms that they may not understand, and that goes right into tech, because a lot of interviews and a lot of the job is you communicating to maybe a non-developer of, hey, what are you doing? What does this do? What does that mean? Hey, and communicating with that non-developer on what they may need from a product owner or a maybe they might be like the person you're making an application for. They might be saying stuff in a non-technical form, and you get to be able to translate that to a technical base. So again, there's a lot of things. You don't have to reinvent yourself. Just pivot, like you said, and just take advantage of the stuff you did learn and did do while you were in.
Yeah, and we have a question from the audience, so I'm going to pull it up on the screen, and it's, now that you're done with your trials and tribulations post-graduation, what are your thoughts on what you learned and how to apply it in your day-to-day?
Okay, so I think they're referring to like in general or just the boot camp.
I think from the boot camp, what you learned. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I mean, really, it's just that day-to-day suck of the boot camp. Which, again, being Air Force, you know how boot camp is or basic training is, where it's like every day is a grind, and you just like you see the finish line because it's all mapped out for you. Like
right.
you know when graduation day is, but it's almost the worst because you know when graduation day is, and you have day to day. In this case, Sabio is essentially 9 hours. I mean, 10. I'm sorry, 12 hours a day for 3 months of just you're expected to be at your desk, at the keyboard, coding, learning, and regurgitating everything you're doing each and every day for 6 days a week for 17 weeks. And that trial and tribulation transfers to, like, again, like you said, once you get to the, I'm not sure what the Air Force calls it, but the Navy, we call it the fleet, post-graduation of boot camp, where you can kind of relax, but you also can't because you're still in that. You still got to find a job. You still got to do that job, and you still have to code at the end of the day. But you're not doing it for 12 hours a day. You don't have a drill sergeant hounding down on you. So in that same sense, yes, you still have to be professional and you still have to code, but you're not doing it at the level you were doing it at your boot camp. And in this case, Sabio was, I think, set you up with those trials and tribulations of you're going to fail, but you have to learn how to fail forward, is what I would say. Hey, my stuff doesn't work. What resource? Okay, move forward. It has to work because you're gonna have an instructor at your doorstep. Like, hey, what are you doing? If you didn't, go and seek help from an instructor before that, or from a peer before that, it's gonna be an issue. Same thing. You can leverage that to now in your one in anyone's professional atmosphere where if you don't have it working, okay, so this is your task. Get it working. Get the resources. That you have around you to help you. And so all those trials and tribulations from that, you leverage that to help you in the everyday, easier days of actually having a job, because not lack of better work, the job is going to be way easier than the boot camp. Way easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. And going back a little bit, before you mentioned that you always got in trouble for breaking apart computers, and you really had an affinity to tech. That was what you started college with.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any hands-on work experience before you decided to take the leap? Because you kind of you were on leave and then you saw vet tech and then you were like, I should do this Sabio thing, and it sounds like it was a pretty quick thing to decide to do. So how did you know that was what you wanted to do?
So yeah, that's a good question. So in tech, no, I didn't have any professional, experience. It was all me just breaking stuff, and getting in trouble. I knew so even when I first joined, so you kind of see a pattern of me just saying, I guess I'll go do it from the start of, I ended up in the Navy after a week of talking to a recruiter. And then I ended up at Sabio after a week of being on leave. I just said, I'm going to drive 3,200 miles. So just my personality is, if I want something, I'm just going to do it. So even when I first joined the Navy, my brother had just started his boot camp in tech, at his tech boot camp, his coding boot camp. And I was driving him back and forth because I was gearing up using his car because I didn't have a car. I was using his car to get back and forth, period. And he was going to his boot camp from around the same hours, like 8 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock p.m. He was at that boot camp every day, including Saturdays. So I saw that, and then he leveraged that after 3 months to, making, whatever the dollar amount was, a really good one at JP Morgan right after that. And I saw that, and that same period he was doing that, I was in boot camp, mopping the floor, doing, all the crazy whatever you could think of. And I get out, I was like, oh, wow, he's making this amount doing what I want to do. And so I always saw that. And then all of a sudden my sister went through, when she graduated college, she went through the same boot camp after that and then got a job at JP Morgan. And then my brother leveraged his job to another job making, 6 figures. I'm like, I'm seeing that while I'm in the military, like I said. So I keep seeing this. And then actually I had 2 cousins that went through the same program. And again, what do you think they ended up working at JP Morgan? So I saw all this in my time while in the Navy. So it was always there. And then I think, again, I was having a great career in the Navy. That carried us there. Like, hey, you're doing well, great evaluations. But I knew what I always kind of knew I can back off on or back up to if I want to go to civilian war. And that's a scary thing for anybody that's been in for a little while and was doing well. It's like, no matter what, that civilian life becomes like a scary transition. But I knew that I had something. I didn't know if I was good enough to do it, but I was seeing like my sister's most least tech savvy person in the world. Like, even like she never broke anything. She was always outside playing basketball, never had like a tech thumb, but she ended up doing it. My little sister, she didn't end up getting a job. She went to another field, but she went through the boot camp and she graduated. The least tech hands-on person, but she went through. So I was like, okay, maybe think about this. So like a year out, I really kind of, you know, thinking about getting out. That kind of turned into, okay, now I'm staying in, I'm re-enlisting. But then again, that 1 week was when I was like, yeah, no, let me sign up so I have it on paper. I have no choice. I'm driving there. In the story, I'm getting out, and that's kind of how that kind of happened.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like it. I love hearing about how the people around you influenced you, and you talked about the challenge of like getting out of the military. It is really scary because you have a stable job, you have health insurance, and like even though there's a lot of challenges with military life, there is that stability, and it is hard to take that leap to get out, and because there's just unknowns in the next phase. So
For
that
sure.
makes a lot of sense. So you took that week of leave, you decided to get out of the military, drive across the country, and so you get to California and you start boot camp. What was it like to start the boot camp?
Honestly, so it really, I mean, again, just being, blatantly honest, it really wasn't too much. So like I was expecting, I don't know, maybe again my mindset, I just expect this thing of like literally boot camp, where it's going to be the instructors kind of hounding down on you. Again, not in a boot camp setting or military way, but like in a, I guess, civilian way of some sort. Like, hey, they're gonna kind of hound down on you. You're gonna have all these things, these obligations, these, hey, go do this, go do this, go do this. You have to do this. How you do this? It wasn't really like that essentially, but it was more like independent. So, Sabio and the boot camp I went to, particularly, it was um, very independent. You're very independent, but yet you have an instructor very close to you at all times. In that, it's a hybrid. Like my model was hybrid, so I was going in person, but it was still, uh, uh, um, I guess, remote instructors available. But like, the instructors are on you in a way that they're pinging you, every, few, I don't know, every 10 minutes, that first couple of days of, hey, we have this obligation, we have this obligation. Hey, we have a class at this time, then we have another class at this time, or lecture, I should say, twice a day for that first month. You have 2 lectures a day. But outside of those lectures and the pings of information throughout the day, the instruction is very, very independent, in that you're going at your own pace, but you're expected to be at this pace or this place by this time, or you're going to get behind. So it's very independent, but very structured independency. In that you want to stay ahead, because if you're not ahead, you're just going to fall behind the lectures. You're not going to take advantage of it. But again, I think it's a good ramp up to prepare you for what the boot camp is going to be, even from a phase level. So like after that first month, that second phase turns into this, and that first month prepares you for that. And then that whole entire ramp up for the whole boot camp phases you up for, or ramps you up for, again, your professional setting and your actual job. Because again, expectations of you are, hey, you can be at a remote job, you're going to be independent, but you're expected to get this done by this time. So you need to be independently resourceful to get stuff done by this time.
Yeah, I think it's been interesting to talk to all the different students who have gone through, or graduates, you're not students, graduates, because Sabio is a type of program where it's not based on like the lowest common denominator. You have that individuality that you can move forward, and like some things may be really easy for you, and then other places may be harder. So like you said, getting ahead, because sometimes something you'll get through it really quick, but then the next thing you might get stuck. And so you have that flexibility to move at the pace that works for you, but then you also have milestones that keep you on track. So it gives you both the I can't think of the word. It gives you that, you know, ability to do it on your own pace, but then you also have the team of like, you have the instructors, you have the queue, and you have the people who you're going through it with, so that you're not alone, and then you have all the like milestones that you need.
Yeah, I kind of say it gives you. I guess the way you kind of try to explain it was you. I compared it to like, hey, having a full blown in person brick and mortar type setting of traditional classroom. Of you don't have it at your pace because you're at the I guess the constraint of the instructor at the front of the classroom going through the instruction for the entire class. And you kind of don't want to be that person to be like, hey, can you slow down? Or hey, can you say that again? Or keep it continuously saying that. And then same thing with the other, 80 students in the class that might be doing the same thing. And you might not get that same type of benefit as when you're going your own pace. I learned, hey, you have the ability, like, yeah, you have to be at this point by this time of the week, but in between that, it's up to you. You can, stop, fast forward, rewind, stop, fast forward. Let me see that again. Let me hear that again slower. Hey, you can make Gregorio's video at a 0.2 snail pace so I can listen to him talk really slowly about this particular thing, which you can't do in person, obviously. But that's the benefit of that independent instruction in a way. But also, again, like you said, you can work on it at your own leisure, but make sure you get to that certain point at this time.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to explain it. You did a much better job than me. We have another question from Royer. This one is, during the product phase, what was the hardest component you worked on besides the presentation to the product owner?
Besides the presentation to the product owner. Hardest one we worked on. So yeah, I always say, I guess I guess it would be like during product, the video conferencing feature I worked on, which is just an embedded. So the product I worked on was for Mackay, a company called Mackay startup, first development team on there, and they wanted some type of communication, embedded communication feature. The product manager or team manager, I guess, communicated that a good feature to have in this case would be something like this that we're on currently, embedded, in this case, feature that you're able to communicate with people across the country, because that's what it was, a mobile app that had partners and employees around the country. I'm not sure where you're located right now, but you need to be able to stand up a video conference from California to Florida with your partner within, a click of a button, not having to do much configuration or links or anything like that. You can just say, hey, message, go to the embedded messaging feature and click this button to bring up a video call. So that was like the most complicated one. That's the one I kind of leveraged for like interviews and stuff like that, because it was pretty robust. It used a lot of different aspects of the development phases, and the product owners, as he spoke of, were really happy with that product feature, because they didn't expect it. They didn't expect to have it, and it was something they didn't know they needed, but they realized, wow, this can really come in handy.
Oh, so you guys were able to kind of realize what tools they needed to solve their problem and like figure out how to do that while you guys were working?
Yeah, so basically, like, that's the cool thing about it. Again, this is something that we were able to leverage from at least I leveraged it in interviews, because not a lot of developers get to that or get to have that, I guess, hands-on or face-forward experience with the product owners and like the product design phase. But at least my team, because it was a new startup that we utilized, or that we I guess interned for, that we were able to sit in with the initial meetings of, hey, this is what the product owners are envisioning. Again, this kind of goes back to like, hey, the non-technical developers talking about, hey, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want to do this, I want to do this, and non-technical developer talk. And as the development team our team leads and team managers are the ones that translate those wants and needs into actual tangible features and storyboards to build out that application. So one of them was, hey, the product owner, all they wanted was all they expected was a simple, video. I mean, not video chat. Maybe like instant messenger or embedded like email service in a way
Yeah.
that they can have. But the product manager or leads in our case felt that it was beneficial to have a video conferencing center that had video instant messaging within it and all that good stuff. Like I said, kind of mimicking what we have here, this setup. And again, that's I think a normal thing in that development process where when you demo it to the product owner, they're like, whoa, okay, this is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly what I was kind of thinking about I needed, but more.
Right.
And you appreciate it because again, a developer has a different eye and a different thought pattern when it comes to uh, uh, what is delivered to the customer and the user and what the user might expect, even more so than like a product owner that's looking at the market and the overall product in a way.
Yeah, I love hearing about the different cohorts and the different projects that you guys get to work on because they're so diverse and they're real world applicable. You said like multiple times you were able to use that in your interviews because you were able to talk about like a real experience, not I learned how to code in a classroom. Like, no, I learned how to code by learning how to do this feature and these are the challenges I've faced and how I overcame them. And I think that's such great leverage for when you're trying to find a job because you have all this information and examples of how you've already taken what you've learned in coding and used it in a job through an internship.
Yep, exactly, and that's just part of the program is like career development, career services, and that's part of it. Like some people are just better than others, but you're gonna learn how to do the baseline level of communicating with interviewers and being an interviewee and how to communicate and utilize stuff that you do during the cohort because you do a lot of stuff. We're surprised about it. We may not know how much we know until you actually convey it to others, and you're like, oh wow, they're impressed by what you're able to do. And me personally, I try to leverage every little thing of that boot camp of, hey, I did this, I did this, I did that, especially with product because again, with that feature alone, it was the entire stack from back in the front end was involved, and I was able to easily communicate that feature alone and basically any type of interview, whether it's full stack, back end developer, front end developer, or React developer, because I did everything in that one feature and I can speak on it after a while really well.
That's awesome. So this kind of leads into like graduating and getting a job. So what was that process like? You already mentioned like using the information you learned in interviews, but what was the experience of going out and finding a job like?
I take it like it's almost likings of like transition from the military because you're like, oh, now we're about to get sent off into the real world again. In my case, again, I think that was pretty much the same because even the boot camp was almost an extension of my military time because it was structured, it was scheduled. I was expected to be at my keyboard at this time and leave at this time, and I was right after the military. Not much time. So that was almost an extension. So graduation was really my first experience as a civilian. Not getting paid, not having a place to be at this time. So it was a little bit like, oh, looking around a little bit like, oh, am I supposed to go outside? Can I take a walk? Can I go? Can I not be at my keyboard all day? And I literally did that. I was at my keyboard still Monday through Friday for that first week at least. Like, when I didn't have anything to do but, apply for jobs and wait for people to call me. But I treated it like a job essentially. But yeah, so for me though, I was pretty lucky, or I don't know if luck's the word, but I was able to start applying to jobs 2 weeks before graduation. Was class green light. That's when we got to get a good amount of knowledge and training on career development, interview prep, and our instructors felt the confidence of us being able to go out and be successful with job hunting. And we hydrated the marketplace with our resumes, on LinkedIn, Dice, all the job boards, different other, individual jobs in my case. But luckily, again, I keep saying luckily, I was able to land an interview about the first week I landed an interview, I think. And then I got my first offer from that interview that next Monday. I got the official offer. So it was fairly quick. Started on a Tuesday, I think. So all of 6 days or 5 days, whatever that is, from applying to my first offer, which was, life of better words, it was a shoulder weight off my shoulder type of experience where it was like, okay, now I can settle down. I have a income to rely on, or I can possibly rely on. So I got that first offer off on my belt, and then again, wasn't stopping though. I was still interviewing, still applying to 75 to 100 jobs a day, every single day, Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday, and Saturday and Sunday actually sometimes. Um, and up to 10 calls a day from recruiters, hiring managers, and scheduling interviews throughout that process. So that first uh, uh, week after graduation was, I might have had 10 interviews, and maybe not 10 interviews, but maybe 5 interviews, and I can't even tell you how many phone screeners from HR and recruiter folks.
Yeah, I like Royer said that you were fortunate, but it also sounds like you were really hardworking. So it wasn't, I mean, it was a little bit of luck and, being in the right place, right time, but you also put in the hard work. So it's not just like, oh, I just got lucky. It's like I did all this hard work and it paid off because you followed the system, you sent out all the resumes, you fielded all the calls, you set up the interviews, and you did what you needed to do because it is a lot of work. I think sometimes people think, "Oh, you got a job so fast," and they don't see like all the work that you put in to get that job because it wasn't like you put out one resume, got one interview, and got the job. There was a bunch more work behind that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and there's a new AI system that it's like an automatic job. It applies for jobs for you and does that work for you. But even that system, it's like it does like 300 job applications a month, so 10 a day. And like I said, I was doing 75 to 100 a day, and and it tells your resume for individual jobs in some cases. I'm like, I was doing that already. So it was like, yeah, it is a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. So, and again, that's something that was the expectation from the boot camp. You will do this. And it's like, it's not a threat, but it's like, hey, this is what the algorithm, like for better words, this is what the program says, and it has worked in the past. And it's almost like they're not going to force you to do it. They expect you to do it, but just saying, the people that don't follow that, they may not get the results that they think they might get, because I followed it and I was far from the best developer or top developer, probably not even in the middle tier of the developers in my cohort alone. But I was one of the first people to land a position because I think that hard work on the front end of following that algorithm for applying.
Yeah, I feel like it's such a great thing to have at the end of a boot camp of like, especially like you were in the Navy for 6 years, you haven't really had to look for a job, and then you had this template to follow,
Mm-hmm.
and they showed you it's just like an op order, like they said this is what you need to do, and you're like, okay, I'll follow all the steps, and it
Exactly.
worked great for helping you. And I think a lot of military veterans don't have that resource. They don't realize how much work it is to get a job, how to write resumes, how to prepare for interviews, and all those things are included. Not only the coding boot camp of like learning how to code, but then how to get a job. I think that's just critical in what Sabio does.
Oh yeah, definitely critical. Like I said, I'm a bootleg mentor slash life coach to a lot of people. So even like I'm still on some military Facebook pages, and people ask about transitioning, and any chance I get, I see that message. I like get the back signal. I'm like, someone asked about resumes, for example, how to leverage your resume or your experience from the military, being like Michael Corpsman, to applying for jobs, and I literally just did everything I learned from not from the transition assistance program. When you get out, I learned everything from Sabio. I just say, hey, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to hydrate, you need to hydrate the market with everything, your resume, and tailor it to the way that they're going to see it, and that AI system is going to be able to filter it and bring in the skills that they want. So definitely, even that alone, I think Sabio is that program alone at Sabio is worth its weight in gold. Just from that knowledge.
Yeah. So we're a little bit over time, but I have one last question for you, which is, what advice would you give someone? You said you like to mentor and coach people. So what advice would you give to someone who's listening, who's thinking, should I take the leap? Should I join a coding boot camp? And someone in the comments just said hydrate. I think that's funny. That's like so military, right?
Probably.
Drink your water. So
hydrate the market in this case.
What?
I said hydrate the market with your resume.
Oh, hydrate the market. I love it.
The more people that see it, the better. The amount of phone calls I get just because I was sent it to random agencies, and it probably just goes into the database, and I get a call, a month later, like, hey, I found your resume. Okay. What's the job? I might want it. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's even now.
Yeah. Because all that hard work, sometimes it takes time to get that resume into the right place. But what if you're like just starting out and you're thinking like, should I join Sabio? Should I go to an info session? Should I learn more about this program? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the situation, I think if you're thinking about it, that means you're looking to transition in some way, right? Just do it, because there's a reason, there's a why, right? I think my why was because I knew what I wanted, not what I knew what I wanted and needed, not just what my people around me in the military were saying, hey, you're doing really well. Here's this carrot, stay in, go do this, re-enlist, go do this. But in the back of my mind, I looked at the VA site and the Sabio informational. I went to the information session for a reason. There was a why. And wherever that why is, I think you just have to take that leap and just do it. And then continue that why in the back of your mind throughout your boot camp, because it's going to be hard. It's going to suck. You're going to second guess it, be like, hey, this is not for me. Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. I'm broke. I can't pay my, whatever it might be in your situation. But if you follow it through, I think, I don't know what the percentage is. I don't want to put out a bad number, but the people that took advantage of it and did everything that they're supposed to do, especially for my cohort, my 2 cohorts I were in, they all have jobs that are paying X amount of money more than they were getting paid before. And they are in a way better position for way less effort now than they ever did in their previous career, and they 10 times less effort than they put into the boot camp. So that boot camp is going to be the hardest thing you do. And then from there, you're going to be making X amount of dollars more. Your lifestyle is going to be a lot more, your home work balance is going to be a lot better off. To me, I'm like, again, a representation of taking that leap no matter what. Like, I didn't know what the heck, I didn't know where I was staying at when I came to California. But yet I knew that being here and doing the cohort would lead me off to better opportunities later, and it has. So just take that leap, and then remember your why, and keep that why in the back pocket.
Yeah. And someone just put in the end of the comments, go away, child, that boot camp is hard but worth it. And I think that's just resonates with what you said. So thank you so much for your time and for being on the show. And thank you everyone for watching and for all your comments. It's been really fun to see your comments and your support for Brian. And I can't wait to get to interview you guys as well. So thanks so much.
I think Warrior might be the next one.
Yeah. So it'll be great. I'm really excited. So thank you so much, everyone, and let's talk again soon.
Thank you.